Welcome back to Existential Evidence, Homicide Files, where we dive deep into the most shocking, mysterious, and chilling cases in true crime. In today's episode, we unravel the twisted and brutal murder of Seth Jackson, a tragedy fueled by teenage drama, jealousy, and manipulation, leading to an unimaginable act of violence that left a 15-year-old boy dead and 5 young lives shattered. Our story centers around 18-year-old Charlie Ely, a young woman struggling to make ends meet while her husband served time in prison. But when she opened her home to friends for financial support, she unknowingly set the stage for a horrific crime. Amid a whirlwind of broken relationships, bitter rivalries, and escalating threats, Charlie found herself swept into a deadly plan, one she would later claim she hadn't anticipated but couldn't escape. In this episode, we'll take you through the shocking events of that night, from the chilling plot to lure Seth into a deadly trap to the dark aftermath that unfolded in Charlie's own backyard. Join us as we break down the disturbing details of how peer pressure and toxic relationships led to a crime that still haunts this small Florida town. Prepare yourself for a story of betrayal, manipulation, and devastating consequences as we peel back the layers of the case that changed these young lives forever. This is the murder of Seth Jackson on Existential Evidence, Homicide Files. The story of Charlie Ely is one of tragedy, manipulation, and betrayal, a young life thrown into a murder plot that would forever haunt her. In 2011, at just 18 years old, Charlie Ely had barely begun her adult life. She had recently graduated high school, married her boyfriend Joseph Burnham, and was expecting their first child. But when Joseph was sent to prison for violating his probation, Charlie's life took a dark turn. Desperate and alone, she let her friends stay in her small home, hoping their rent payments would help her scrape by. Little did she know, this decision would ultimately lead her down a path of unimaginable horror. It all began with a bitter breakup. Amber Wright, Charlie's close friend, was entangled in a volatile relationship with 15-year-old Seth Jackson. Their love story had spiraled into chaos, with each of them turning to social media to spread rumors and accusations. Amber's brother, Kyle Hooper, and another friend, Michael Bargo, were drawn into the drama, becoming increasingly hostile towards Seth. Michael Bargo, who was a few years older than the others, had a reputation for trouble. He was a drug dealer with a violent streak. Bargo's hatred for Seth grew to the point that he openly declared he wanted him dead. And rather than trying to stop him, the others, caught up in the teenage rivalry and drama, did nothing to intervene. Instead, a twisted plan began to form, with Charlie's home as the designated crime scene. On the night of April 17, 2011, Amber lured Seth to Charlie's house under the guise of reconciliation. She played on Seth's lingering feelings for her, promising a chance to talk things out. When Seth arrived, he walked into a trap, unaware that Bargo, Kyle, and another friend, Justin Soto, were hiding, armed with pieces of wood and a revolver waiting to attack. As soon as Seth entered the house, Kyle struck him on the head with a wooden object, knocking him off balance. He tried to fight back, but the others quickly overpowered him. Michael Bargo emerged from a bedroom, brandishing the gun. In a terrifying sequence of violence, Seth was shot repeatedly, tortured, and ultimately dragged to the bathroom, where the brutal attack continued. Charlie and Amber, although not directly involved in the physical assault, were far from innocent bystanders. After hearing the gunshots and the sounds of Seth's desperate struggle, they retreated to Charlie's bedroom, terrified, yet complicit. They could have called for help. they didn't. They simply waited as Seth's life was extinguished in the most horrific way possible. The horror didn't end there. In an attempt to cover up their crime, Bargo and the others devised a gruesome plan to dispose of Seth's body. They dragged him to the backyard, where they burned his remains in a fire pit. A pit Charlie and her husband had built for burning brush. All the while, Charlie claims she stayed in her room, cowering in fear. Yet, the smell of burning flesh and smoke filled the air. When she peeked out the window, she could see the flames rising. And though she would later claim ignorance of what exactly was burning, she knew deep down that Seth's body was being reduced to ashes in her own backyard. Over the next few days, the group hastily cleaned the house, attempting to erase the evidence of their crime. Bleach, cleaning supplies, and even paint were used to cover up the bloodstains left by Seth's final struggle. Charlie admitted that, in the aftermath, she saw that the bathroom doors were removed from their tracks and placed against the wall, suggesting a scene of macabre activity had occurred there. Despite their efforts to hide the evidence, the story quickly unraveled. Each member involved was brought in for questioning, and one by one, they cracked under pressure. During her interrogation, Charlie tried to minimize her involvement, claiming she had been coerced, that she was afraid of Bargo, and that she never intended for Seth to die. She insisted that her only role was to bring Seth to the house, not knowing the full extent of Bargo's violent intentions. But the investigators saw through her lies. They knew Charlie had played a role in setting the deadly trap, even if she hadn't pulled the trigger herself. She was complicit, fully aware that Seth was in danger when she opened her door and invited him in. Her attempts to shift blame and cover her tracks fell flat in the face of the cold, hard evidence against her. Charlie Ely was convicted of first-degree murder and initially sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Years later, her conviction was overturned and she was retried, pleading guilty to second-degree murder. This time, she received a 10-year sentence, eventually walking free after serving her time. The tragedy of this story lies not only in the brutal and senseless death of a 15-year-old boy, but in the squandered lives of all those involved. Young people, caught up in the toxic allure of drama and revenge, threw away their futures for a fleeting, twisted sense of loyalty. For Charlie Ely, the darkness that invaded her home that night in 2011 left an indelible mark, haunting her even as she walks free today. Thank you for watching today's episode of Existential Evidence Homicide Files. Don't forget to subscribe and stay with us as we continue to unearth the darkest stories in true crime. Until next time, remember, our choices define us, but sometimes the shadows that follow us can define our fate.